See what happens. Hey, are we on? I can't tell because there's always this like little delay because I press the button and then YouTube decides to, wait.
Yeah, it looks like I see us. I see us on there.
Oh, we're on there?
Let me try refreshing
everyone.
the page. There we are.
Hey, look at that.
We're here.
We're here.
And all the names are wrong.
What? Are the names wrong? Oh no,
Yes.
they're wrong again.
Oh my gosh, I joked that you were going to be Nonat1s and I was going to be Steven.
Oh my word.
And then you actually did it.
I did it. Oh no, we did it again. Oh, but wait, I did something. Oh, there we are. We're normal again. Yay, we got it right this time. Look at that.
I'll have to wait a solid 10 seconds to see it correct itself.
Well, I did it on purpose this time. Just like last time, which was completely on purpose.
Smooth.
It was completely on purpose. And by that I mean not at all on purpose because I'm a liar.
Okay, well, I'm Steven Glicker, as you know.
No,
I'm the
You're Mark. And then we got Nonat1s.
I'm back.
Noni. No.
Wait, isn't he Mark? That's what it said in the last episode. Not me?
No.
I don't know who I am anymore.
Don't know.
You're a lot older than I thought from your other streams. Do you just use a lot of like makeup and stuff?
All makeup.
Okay.
So this might be the dog barking episode because I have 2 dogs. And there is someone coming to my house to fix something, so I might be very muted this episode. We'll see how doggy barky they become because they're terriers and they like to say hello to everyone. So we'll see.
We'll see if mine behaves. She's curled up on the couch right now, so we'll see how long that lasts.
Oh, okay. So I was away last week.
Are we gonna role play as each other for this episode though, or should we just be ourselves?
I think we should be ourselves. Well, you guys can role play.
Oh wait,
each
actually,
other.
you switched it back, so it's got the right.
Yeah,
now.
I switched it back. Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind.
We could do that. That would not be great because
be a difficult.
I don't have enough energy to be Nonat right now.
Nobody does. Even I don't have enough energy to be Nonat.
Yeah, I know.
I especially don't since it's earlier.
Oh god. Well, I had my drinking stream last night, so I'm nice and tired today.
Oh boy.
Oh, you had a drink. Oh, that's right. You do those drinking streams. Why? Why?
Beyond just enjoying being tipsy, it helps me in some ways go off on tangents and rants, which a lot of chats do enjoy. And I don't, when it comes to talking about my reactions to game design, when there's a perfect level where I'm just tipsy enough but not quite drunk, where I'm able to just give my unfiltered thoughts about it, like my first impressions of things, and deliver it fairly fluently. But there's also when I tip over that line and I will go on a 15-minute rant about why this archetype needed this slight change to a feat. And it's really fun and people really like it.
No,
we just did the
Discord's working now, so you can actually tell your people this time, unlike last time. By the way,
Discord exists. It exists. Therefore,
I have a drinking. Look, I'm drinking. See, it looks like Diet Coke, but it's actually Diet Pepsi.
This cup is straight vodka.
Really?
It's lemonade.
It could be.
It could be. You never know, Steven.
You are drunk.
Pretty much always.
And Mark's a teetotaler. Mark does not drink.
That's true.
That is true. I do remember that. I remember that at PaizoCon. He's not a drinker.
Nothing wrong with that.
Are you going to PaizoCon on that? We talked about it.
I hope so. Yeah, I really want to. Are tickets on sale yet, or?
Yeah, I'm sure you can get. I'm sure
they were supposed to be on sale.
Yeah,
last week, but then they didn't get on sale because they were unable to ascertain how many of the people from 2 years ago were keeping theirs or canceling. And I guess they had more people who theoretically could keep it than the actual limit to people, if you see what I mean. So because it's limited to 500 attendees, so if everyone was rolling it over, maybe they wouldn't have had any space. So they had, or at least it was enough that they couldn't predict it, that they needed to figure out rollover and then get the tickets. You know, what I've heard.
You know, the scary part, it's limited to 500 attendees, and Roll for Combat might have like 10 people there. So 2% of PaizoCon will be Roll for Combat this year.
Oh,
so,
geez.
There you go. So that would mean that if you roll your D100, you roll a 99 or 100, the person is Roll for Combat and your random encounter.
That's right. Well, we have the random encounter table. We're at the top. There goes the dogs. We're not at the bottom. We're not the 1 or the 2. That's what you get if you get Nonat. Yeah, roll a 1, you get Nonat.
No, Nonat1s.
Nonat 1. Yeah, that's why
you
it's a 1.
Random encounters. Well, that could be something that Pathfinder could learn from D&D because they still.
I made a video on that like a year and a half ago. Like, use random encounter tables. It can be annoying to have to make your own, but like, there's so many back in like the D&D rules cyclopedia has like 3 full pages of different encounter tables for different environments. And like, sure, not all of those creatures have comparable stat blocks in 2e, but most of them do. Like, there's bears, there's goblins, there's orcs, so you can absolutely
your 3 classic opponents.
Exactly. Yeah, you really don't find anything else in these games,
or combinations thereof. Goblin bears.
Ooh, goblin bears.
I love random tables. That's like, oh god, so much.
We played D&D first edition for a year. We specifically made it a point. We wanted to see we wanted to experience the system as raw as we could. So we did not change a single rule. So like, encounter tables, we always use them. Like, oh, how many days are we traveling? 3 days. That's like 6 rolls on the encounter table, 1 in the day, 1 at night. Yeah, and it led to some really interesting situations. As much as we poo-poo some of those old archaic-looking rules, some of them have value beyond the surface, which I really learned to appreciate in that campaign.
There's a lot you can get from just having a random encounter table in terms of ideas, and just restrictions breed creativity, and it puts a little bit of restriction on you, and it allows your creativity to soar sometimes. Even if you decide maybe you didn't want that one and you rolled a random encounter table again, that's still exercising your agency.
Right? Absolutely. Yeah, and a random encounter, what I love, it doesn't have to be a combat. On that table, they rolled Dwarven Merchant. So they met a Dwarven Merchant and escorted him back to town. It was like a nice little side quest. He became a recurring side character, which was fun.
Absolutely.
It's really cool.
I've gone mute because just as we started, the air conditioner guy came and my dogs decided to greet them and say hello. And that's how so are we dumber than dogs? Because dogs can understand an average of 200 human words, and humans can understand 0 dog words. So who's smarter?
But we do understand a limited amount of dog language, like body language.
Yeah, but they actually understand the words. Like, they don't even see the language. They just know what we're saying. I think dogs are smarter than us. What do you think, possible. Mark?
I think that the way that we rate intelligence is like pretty biased towards human expressions of intelligence. And so it depends on your definition of what is intelligence. As someone who's researched, like, I guess, intelligence before, because I was into AI research before working at Paizo, it's rough because, like, we look at things that we can do and say that's what makes you intelligent. So by those standards, dogs are less intelligent because we wrote the standards and it's based on
we came up with the.
Hey Vanessa, we should get Lauren on the stream because she is getting her PhD in animal intelligence. So I can get her on the stream, and then we could talk about this for 5 hours. She will have opinions, let me tell you. So, believe it or not, we actually are eventually going to talk about something. I don't know what, but something about D&D and Pathfinder.
Yeah,
but
I sort of tried to bring it on track when I said maybe Pathfinder could learn about random encounter tables.
No, we'll do that in time. We got to let people, like, filter in.
All right.
Relax.
Well, then how about, what if Pathfinder used Thaco?
You know what? I liked Thaco.
Thank you, Steven. I really liked Thaco.
I liked Thaco. Thaco was genius. See, I don't know why. Actually, why is there so much hate for Thaco? Because if anyone played D&D first edition and went to second edition, it was a revelation. I mean, second edition, first of all, second edition is so robust that all the best computer games are based on second edition.
Oh yeah, and Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, and Icewind Dale. I love Icewind Dale.
Neverwinter Nights might have been as well.
They're so good, and it works because it is an elegant, really thought out system. Is it very deep? No. Is the math it's relatively deep. I mean, that's actually not true. It's relatively deep. And the math is a little kludgy, but it's 1,000. Mark likes when I exaggerate. Mark, it's 1 billion times better than the math in D&D first edition. And look, I'm not exaggerating because there's
I know a lot of people
tables.
don't like D&D second edition. My group played it for many years.
Yeah.
That being said,
oh boy.
I'm not going to go with you two in liking Thaco. Our group had no problem with it. We were like very good at math, but it's just not a good mechanic, and it's not Thaco's fault because everyone blames Thaco because it's the long acronym. The problem is that AC going down was like certain things going down were good and certain things going up were good.
Sure.
It was confusing and it made it harder to figure out what your accuracy was. So like in that case, and that may be what both of you were saying, is like Thaco helped solve the problem that was AC going down by making it so that it at least helped you remember what you needed to roll to hit that particular AC.
Right.
But it's sort of like a patch on a sinking ship, and turning it around so that you could just use addition to hit a number basically is strictly simpler than having it go down and then have it Thaco.
I suppose. I do like the idea of having an attack chart, though. Like, you are a level 5 fighter. This is your Thaco range. Like, I found it was a lot harder to teach someone. I will give you that full on. Like, it is a lot harder to be like, okay, what class are you? What level are you? Okay, find this page, find your class, find what level you are, write that down in your character sheet, that chart. But once you have it, it's so easy. Like, what's their AC? 2? Okay, I have a 15 Thaco, so I'll hit them on a 13.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
I don't know, because you had to subtract it from the 15. So you have to do a lot of extra steps in your head.
Well, so did you ever have the character sheet that at the bottom of the character sheet, it had your Thaco and it went from -5 to +5, and underneath it you would just write what number on the die hits that?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you turned it all into a lookup chart, so that instead of doing any math, you looked it up on a matrix.
Yeah, so the book came with the chart, the matrix itself, the attack chart, and once you have your numbers, you just write those down on the bottom of your character sheet. There was a spot for it, and yeah, I would roll. I'd be like, what's the armor class? 1. Okay, I would look at 1 on my Thaco line, and then right below that, it would say what number I need to hit.
So you could do that as well. Like if you like lookup charts, you can do that with just as easily with 5e bounded accuracy, for example, right? You could have
played
except for that the numbers wouldn't be
in
-5 to
1989?
+5.
Is that what you're saying, Mark?
What?
5e was out in 89. Wow.
I mean, if all that you two are saying is that having Thaco in 89 was better than not having it at all, and still having to deal with ACs that go down and get
yes,
and become the harder to hit AC, then no contest. That's correct.
Well, that's what
Thaco was something that made it easier to deal with something that was already very hard to deal with.
Right.
And it is just easier to not do either of those two things. I will agree with that. No contest.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, using Thaco today, no way. No
yeah,
way.
it's not a smoother system. I will never pretend it is. No. There was something satisfying though about being like, yeah, I have a -4 armor class, which is like amazing. And for some reason that feels more impressive than saying I have a 22 armor class in 5e.
So a few things. First of all, don't forget, do like and subscribe if you like what you're watching. And second, anyone wants
if
to
you don't
ask
like
some
what
questions,
you're watching, why are you watching?
Well, because they like it. You never know. Some people,
I guess
you know
that's
what?
true.
Some people hate
Maybe they
watch.
watch it specifically not to like it, and they're like, those
Nonat,
Glicker, Scyther, and Nonats.
The Nonat said we should be insulting everyone. So
That's true.
I'm going to insult everyone. Vanessa, I'm insulting you. Boo.
Rude.
Boo, Vanessa. Ooh, Eleanor Farron. Hi, Eleanor. I'm never going to insult Eleanor because she's awesome.
Eleanor's fantastic.
Yes, we'll never insult
Vanessa is also fantastic. I just can't understand the idea of insulting people being something
Right.
I know.
is a good
Ooh,
idea.
We got a super chat. Jack One Spade wrote, being punched in the face is better than kicked in the crotch. That doesn't make it a good thing. You know,
that was about Thaco.
Thaco.
You know, I hate to admit it, but as someone does boxing and kickboxing and karate for 20 years, I love getting punched in the face. I love it, man.
Ooh, learning a lot about Steven here today.
I do. I do.
Steven.
I don't mind it. I really don't. It's something I do for pleasure. Now, kicked in the crotch, you're right. Not a good thing. Not a good thing.
I don't think we needed to know this. Let's move on.
Hey, I have to answer. It's a super chat. I have to answer any super chat. That's
$5 is all it takes to get that kind of
$5
weird
to learn
information
anything
from
you want about me or Mark or Nonat. So okay, good thing or bad thing, which I actually think is way worse than Thaco. So that's my opinion. Advantage, disadvantage.
It is too universal.
Yep.
And for some people, that's a great thing. For simplicity's sake, it's a great thing. But within even a few sessions, I got sick of being like, can I do this really cool move? And my GM will be like, okay, yeah, have advantage as a reward. And it just feels like a pity prize. Like, I have no idea how to do this, so just take advantage or disadvantage. That's it.
So it was one of the things that I expected people to say would be something that maybe Pathfinder could learn from D&D, and I think there are a lot of things that they can each learn from each other. But I actually think that in this case, I'm going to go with Nonat1s that it comes up a little bit too often in D&D for Pathfinder to want to have it come that often, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The way I'm picturing this is that the two games are deciding to learn from each other by looking at what the other game is doing and then like theoretically shifting themselves.
Yep.
And Pathfinder does not want to be shifted to have that much of roll twice and take the better or roll twice and take the lower, because especially with the degrees of success and the fact that you're relatively balanced against certain opponents, it's a huge deal. If anything, like I made a mistake with the way that I implemented True Strike, and it throws some things off, and it maybe should have been not as open-ended as it is there. And
in Pathfinder?
In Pathfinder 2nd.
Really?
You made a mistake? Let's FAQ it right now. Unofficial
I don't know.
FAQ.
It's close, but I think that it maybe should have been the case that True Strike was more about strikes, and then you wouldn't have to worry about them on spell attack rolls, and you could do some other things with spell attack rolls. I think people might have liked it better if spell attack rolls like kind of went up at a different rate than spell DCs and had like items for them, because they kind of feel like they maybe should, and they go up like at different levels than they go up at the same level, say like that rangers and barbarians and champions get their attack bonuses, so 5 and 13 instead of 7, 15, 19, and then it added item bonuses and maybe don't have True Strike, something like that. I'm not sure, but I really liked True Strike, Power Attack, True Strike, 1-inch punch, True Strike spells, and things like that, and that's part of why I went for it.
Yeah,
but having those advantages and disadvantages needs to be something that's hard to get in Pathfinder, and True Strike maybe makes it a little too easy. Maybe
if you could go back and rewrite it, what are your thoughts on taking from like OG True Strike, where like not necessarily OG, but like back in 3.5, advantage wasn't a thing. True Strike gave you a flat plus 20 to hit. Now, obviously, you couldn't do that in this, but like, would making True Strike granting like plus 5 to your next attack, do you think that would be too powerful, even if it was like 2 actions?
I think that it would probably be too much of an issue because of some very dangerous things that are put on a critical success effect. I think that rolling twice is solid on True Strike overall, but that maybe it's devil's in the details, right? What if True Strike was a 2-action spell that true to its name gave you a strike?
Yeah, I mean, there's twice, also right? So there's also the option playing around the crit system of what if it was your next attack is you do not roll, it is a normal success. Like you are spending extra actions, it cannot crit, but you also cannot miss.
Yeah, there's definitely different things you could play around with it. And people in the chat are saying they love True Strike. I do too. That's part of why I did it. But looking back on it and some of the like kind of knock-on effects, maybe I shouldn't have. But I love it.
Is advantage and disadvantage an extra 3.3? I thought it was an extra 5 or 5.5.
So here's the deal with it, right? So it depends on what your overall accuracy was to begin with. If you needed exactly an 11 to hit in 5e, then that's a 50-50 chance, right? And so that's rolling twice and taking the better is more of a 3/4 chance. It is exactly a 3/4 chance, which is like needing a 6 to hit, which is a +5. That's the best case scenario. It's usually somewhere between 4 and a 5, and it sometimes averages a 4.5. However, it can be like way different than that, right? Like if you have a if you only can hit on like a 19, then rolling twice is way worse than getting a +4 because or it's if you only need to hit on a 20, for example, because and then on the other side in 5e, right, you're not going to hit on a 1 no matter what. So if you needed a 2 to hit, a +4 doesn't really matter. It doesn't do anything. Whereas rolling twice helps you somewhat. So there are edge cases in Pathfinder 2nd edition because of the 4 degrees of success. It is much more stable across the entire D20 of being around a +4. You can look at it. That assumes that what you're re-rolling is something like a strike where there's critical hits involved.
So we have some super chats.
Yes.
Do the $10 one first. Jack One Spade. A little off topic, but we'll still answer. When trying to become a published writer, how much does it cost to get your own art and layout for PDF? I have things I'm working on that need skills and I don't have, but I don't know how to gauge costs. So
a lot.
I'm bad because I do all my layout myself, and I have 30 years experience working with artists. So I pay anywhere. It's usually the approximate cost for decent art is for spot art, like usually like a headshot or something tiny, is like $50 to $75 full color. For a full body person, anywhere from $100 to $200 without a background. With a background, it can go up to $300 or so. And then half page is around $400. A full page could be about $800, and a cover could be $1,200 to $2,000. And that's approximate. These are the prices I usually pay approximate. I do my own layout, so I don't know what layout costs. Believe it or not, someone who you should talk to, Jack One Spade, Vanessa Hoskins, who's on here right now. You can talk to her on the Discord channel at rollforcombat.com if you want, because she does her own self-publishing, and she has a better idea probably of what her costs are, and she has a very successful book series that she's been publishing. But it's whatever you want. A lot of people, when they do self-publishing, they'll buy clip art, and there's a lot of good clip art there.
Or use public domain art.
Yeah, public domain art. I because I'm putting out, quality, expensive, not that you're not, but I mean, like, these are, here we go, hardcover book. Look, just came from the printer. Like, these
Jack One Spade
we're
says
not fooling around.
It's difficult when you'd like to pay a fair market rate for labor, but you can't.
Whoops.
Totally.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I wanted to do the dragon book that we're doing. Like, I thought about it on my own. I never did because I couldn't afford the art until I told it to Steve, and he's like, let's do it. And here's the thing about it too, which is that artists and I'll believe them on this. Artists would like to be paid more than that for their art, and generally consider that to be like a rate that's like relatively low, but a lot of companies do, and some of the numbers Stephen quoted were a little higher than that.
I
not
do
by a lot.
Yeah, but what I also do is I buy 10 to 20 pieces at a time, so I get a better rate too.
Right,
and that's a trick.
Because that. When you're a freelancer, having a solid block where you know you're going to get paid is a lot better than doing one thing and wandering around for a while. If you were someone who wouldn't have a full
for actual layout, and I've had a lot of success with this. Believe it or not, I use Fiverr a lot.
Fiverr's great.
I'd say Fiverr. I say you have about a 70% success rate with Fiverr, which means 30% of the time you're going to get a bad experience. Because you just don't know who these people are. I usually will work with people and give them a small project at first to make sure we're both on the same wavelength. But there's, excuse my dogs, there's a lot of good people out there who, how loud are they? Pretty loud. There's a lot of good people out there who do InDesign layout, and they're actually very good. And I think if you wanted to do InDesign layout, I think you would be okay with Fiverr, and they're pretty reasonable and easy to work with. It really, you know, like artwork, there's a lot of good people on Fiverr as well, and they're reasonable. That's one way I would go. I mean, you could also just talk to the community and see if anyone wants to work with you. You know, that's another way. What about you, Nonat? What's your experience? Because you're doing a new Kickstarter, which we'll talk about in a little while.
Yeah. So yeah, from our estimated costs right now, to put things into perspective, artwork is looking to run about 30 to 40% of our entire expenses. Like, it is almost half of our pricing, just because, you know, again, you want that high quality, you want to pay a fair wage. And so, like, yeah, if we wanted to, we could just put words in a book and put that out for literally half the price. But there's just that nice sheen of a quality product that comes with detailed artwork of all the different characters, especially since we're releasing specifically a book of NPCs. Being able to look at any NPC and show your players what they look like is awesome. And so it's worth going that extra mile. But yeah, unless, like I said, unless you can find the open source public domain stuff, art is going to be pricey.
It's really not uncommon that the art costs more than the words. In fact, one of the few places that I've seen it be even closer in favor of the words is with writing for Battle Zoo. Some of our like top rates for word rates are pretty high compared to when I'm writing for Paizo or other places, and so they can get closer to the art. But normally, it's like, you know, you write this really super long, complicated rules thing, and it's illustrated with 3 pieces of art. The 3 pieces of art probably pay more than the words in most situations, which also means if you're self-publishing, that the words that you wrote yourself and didn't have to pay yourself for because you were self-publishing were not the majority of what the expense would have been to get them from freelancers.
What I would recommend, and then let's move on, is that write what you want to write first. Just don't worry about the art yet. Trust me, don't worry about the art. Just write it and get that done. Then when you need art, there's a lot, and I mean a lot, of public domain and clip arts, or you know what I mean, not clip art, but art that you can get at art houses like Adobe Art, and there's all these places that are very reasonable, and then you can use them commercially. And in fact, was it DM Dave? He publishes a tremendous amount of books. I was just looking because I have all his books over there, and most of his art is all from public art assets, and I think very little of his art, I might be wrong, but I see a lot of it like other places that I think they just buy art and then use it in their books because it's fast and easy, and you throw a filter on it and do some stuff and voila, you got art. So don't worry about the art as much. There's a lot of ways around that.
So there was another question from Ollie Wright that said, if D&D didn't have the brand name recognition advantage, which system do you think would be more popular and why?
Wait, I want to talk about this.
I've heard this a lot, yeah.
I hear this a lot. I went down, Mark and I were talking this weekend. So believe it or not, this sounds weird. Back in the day when Magic the Gathering first came out, when it was first came out in 1993, when they came out with their very first expansion, they were thinking of doing Antiquities with a different colored back. So they were going to make the back of Antiquities. You can look this up on the internet. It was like pink. And so they were going to have every expansion have a different colored back. And then each expansion would be different. It would sort of be like a collecting livable game instead of a collectible card game. They didn't. Now, if we could like sliding doors this, can you imagine if WotC decided to come out with different colored backs for Magic, and then maybe Magic doesn't become the gigantic thing it became today, and then Magic doesn't become a multi-billion-dollar company, become WotC, buy D&D, which then gets bought by Hasbro, and then this whole path of everything we've seen to this day has been laid out. If WotC doesn't become a multi-billion-dollar company, does WotC buy D&D? Because at that time, that's right when D&D was dying, like heavily dying, and Hasbro was, and the TSR was basically giving up the ghost on D&D. So we could be living in an alternative universe where D&D just doesn't even exist anymore. And maybe even Pathfinder doesn't exist. Maybe we were all playing My Little Pony. I don't know. It's like, it could have been anything. But it's impossible to know, but you can't say enough about the D&D brand name. The D&D brand name is part of our culture and has been for 50 years. Yep. And you know, the brand name alone is worth a ton of money. And when I used to work way back in the 90s with Microsoft, and I would have meetings with them, man, they were cocky. They used to say that we could publish an empty box with the word Microsoft on it and sell 1 million copies, because that's how popular they were. And they would say that in meetings to me. I remember that. I think D&D goes a long way, because like when a lot of people I talk to want to start out, they're going to say, oh, what's D&D? Or they want to play D&D, or their kids want to play D&D, because it's in Stranger Things, it's in Futurama, it's in Community, you know, it's in a lot of our popular culture. Not too many people talk about anything else. I'm not even going to say Pathfinder. Like, they just don't talk about any other game. They just don't, because it's not part of popular culture. If you said Pathfinder, that can mean 10 things, unfortunately, because there's a lot of things called It's like, oh, you're talking about the car?
You're talking about the Apex Legends character?
Yeah, exactly. Or the Apex Legends, right. There's a lot of things named Pathfinder. There's nothing called Dungeons and Dragons. They're the only thing in town, and the only game in town. So,
okay. But if we accept the premise of the question, it's very difficult to try to analyze that. Yes. I'll give it a shot. But let's pretend that there was no brand recognition advantage here. 5e came out when it did. Pathfinder 2nd Edition came out when it did, and they're the same games that they are right now, other than just taking the brand recognition out. I think that 5e would still be more popular in terms of plays. The question is, which would be more? Obviously, it would have less of an advantage than it does now. I think it still would be, because it came out first. 2, it came out first and is friendly towards new players. It had quite a bit of time during which it would have been onboarding new players, even in this scenario where it didn't have a brand name advantage over Pathfinder before Pathfinder 2nd Edition came out. And so I think it would still have built up the momentum that it would have. It would have the popularity advantage, just maybe not by as ridiculous of as big of an advantage as it has in our universe, where it does have the brand name advantage.
Something that has advantage.
Something that has not been mentioned yet. Even if, let's look at this in a vacuum. Let's say D&D didn't even exist before 5e, but Hasbro still owns WotC, who is releasing this TTRPG. Hasbro has infinite advertising money. They are able to push this in Stranger Things. They're able to fund the multi-million-dollar Critical Role, and they can just afford things that no other tabletop role-playing game company could even fathom, because they don't have literal billions from Daddy Hasbro. So even without the D&D brand name, their marketing campaigns would, and still are, completely unmatchable from anyone else in the business, which will always lead to a more successful and recognizable product and that brand would just be created on its own, even without the predecessor of old D&D editions.
Yeah. I don't know. It's impossible to fully answer because D&D has been part of our culture heavily since the 80s. And I mean the 70s really, but really
it's totally impossible. And
Yeah.
some of it is random, right?
Yeah.
We can even see we have ways to peek into the fact that it's random. And so even though I said I think that's what would have the advantage, it could be that it wouldn't be, right? Because like in Japan, I heard that Call of Cthulhu is one of their most popular Western RPGs because one stream in Japan got really popular. And so Orphan mentioned Critical Role, sticking with Pathfinder, which is what they played before. So like in a hypothetical universe where Critical Role where neither of them had a brand advantage and then Critical Role played Pathfinder, right? That could have been what tipped it over to the other direction, because sometimes it comes down to a zeitgeist. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but I think that taking everything of brand out and only taking into account the timing and the fact that it was a good acquisition game, that 5e would be able to have the edge, barring random factors in Pathfinder 2nd Edition's favor, and the edge of number of people who played it.
I mean, I think Harmon Quest and Harmon Town, which uses Pathfinder, is vastly superior to Critical Role. But even though they have higher production values, amazing star power, and we're a real television show and had freaking Dan Harmon on it, for God's sakes, not popular at all. It's just it's just the luck of the dice. It's the random table.
That's such an interesting example to bring up, because I had heard of Harmon Quest. I had seen the ads. I didn't even know it was Pathfinder. I literally just assumed it was D&D because that's what's popular. They
put the Pathfinder rulebook up every once in a while, but they don't advertise it very loudly on Harmon Quest. I don't know. I tend not to watch a lot of actual plays directly, but I have seen some of Harmon Quest.
Harmon Quest is funny.
And I watched like the first season of that because it was Pathfinder. I was like, oh my gosh. And it's got like the animation. And I have watched the Vox Machina.
I didn't watch that yet.
I watched that the animated Vox Machina, which is probably not a realistic representation of watching the live play of Critical Role. But I will say that between the two of them, I like them both, but that I like the animated Vox Machina, I think, better than Harmon Quest. But that may just be that I don't like live plays as much, and I did not watch Critical Role as a live play.
So we did have one nice thing. Sam Brockman just wrote, "You are amazing" for $20 with a cool animation. That's for Nonat. That's not for me. Well, he says you are could be anyone.
It could be plural, because maybe we're all amazing.
Don't take my thunder, Mark.
That's right. You are. You do have thunder.
I'll be right back. Keep going without me. I'll jump right back in.
Wow. So much for that. He takes his thunder and leaves.
And he leaves. Okay.
Wow. So all right. Let's talk about Nonat and how we can improve him.
Before we got the questions, we were talking about different things that D&D and Pathfinder can learn from each other, and we were talking about advantage and whether we think it could learn from each other. So I'm going to give another thing that I think Pathfinder could learn from D&D potentially, which is that one thing that's very interesting that D&D did that could be useful for Pathfinder is taking certain aspects of the system that like most people are going to want to use and making them optional anyway. And because of the fact that way, the percentage of people who don't want to have to deal with them and who are new don't have to deal with them at first, or can decide whether to add them or not. That's kind of interesting. It would be hard for Pathfinder 2nd Edition to do that to quite the extent that 5e did, but that is definitely an interesting factor. It was one of the things that I was planning on mentioning today, that the Pathfinder could try to learn from D&D, being like kind of like more streamlined beginner box, like because D&D put out a beginner box type thing first for 5th edition.
The starter kit,
the starter kit, exactly. And so being able to start with something that was beginner box simple and then go from that up to a more complex game as like the progression path is something D&D did that I think could have been useful for Pathfinder.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, Pathfinder is what it is. That's the thing. It's like, in the end of the day, Pathfinder is a more crunchy system, and D&D is a really simplified system. It just is what it is, and I don't think anyone's going to change that. You know, like Pathfinder, I don't think is going to get any simpler. And I mean, but you could make D&D more crunchy, and it's funny because the new 5.5 or 6.0, whatever they're calling it, you know, there's a lot of calls.
They're not going to call it any numbers.
I know. You and I know. We're not. I say that just so people know what we're talking about. I guarantee they're not calling it. It's D&D for the rest of their lives. Forever. I agree. Yeah. Forever. Yes. And one thing I do notice is that D&D or WotC or anything, I'm gonna get flack for this, but I don't care. They're always doing catch up with Paizo, it seems, in a weird way. Like, hey, did they just announce a book today that's made from people of color, all the writers? And I'm like, oh, that's nice. Paizo did that a year ago, right? But it was nice that, you know, WotC decided to do. Like, they're always like a year behind, it seems like. And I don't know if that's just coincidence or
some of them somewhat coincidence, somewhat Paizo in some of those social aspects has been more at the forefront. When we're talking about what kind of books are written, I can tell you that if WotC puts out announces a Magic Academy slightly after or slightly before us, that's coincidence. When they do that, because WotC solicits their books exceptionally late compared to anyone else, and that's because they know that they they know that the distributors are just going to buy a lot of it no matter what.
That's fair.
But other companies have to give their books out to the distributors sooner.
I thought you meant they start development.
That a WotC book will be longer in the process before they announce it. So if they ever announce something that Paizo already announced something very similar, WotC was definitely working on it before Paizo announced it, unless the announcement happens way, you know, like years afterwards, then they didn't.
Yeah. So I do think Paizo seems to have more forethought. They seem to. I feel like Pathfinder has a lot more planned. Like, you know, I've talked to like Logan Bonner and some people who are like, yeah, we know the next like 6 books we're publishing in roughly the order. They're not necessarily designed yet, but they know what they're going for. Whereas, I mean, you know, I don't know anyone who works at Wizards, but it always feels like they're just thinking about the next book.
Well, I know I know people talking in Wizards. I know people at Wizards, but they are really tight-lipped. they don't say a thing, so I can't even get anything out of them.
They have a very ironclad NDA, so it's kind of hard to tell in that regard. Yeah. But I definitely think that there's some other things that are interesting. Another thing that I won't say completely that Pathfinder is only learning it from D&D, because it is true that Pathfinder First Edition did this too, is that D&D is not afraid to just like completely rewrite a fundamental rule of the game in a later book just to see what people think about it. I think that's very interesting. It's kind of like Pathfinder Unchained as well, but like when I was working on looking at like encounter difficulties and XP amounts using the Dungeon Master's Guide to try to associate it with monster parts, and then it was like, oh yeah, but actually in Xanathar's they completely redid that entire system, and so that's really interesting. And when people are talking about Paizo being willing to innovate, that's a way that D&D is willing to really innovate it. Just like you'd almost usually have an edition change when you're going to do something like that, or a mini edition change, but Wizards is not afraid to put out like big variants, like big bold variants like that, and that's very interesting. I think it's something cool that I mean, Pathfinder, like, don't get me wrong, I wrote the variants in the Game Mastery Guide so that you can customize the game in that way, and it is I'm not going to say it's like 100% a positive of changing large aspects of the games, especially if you made it an official change, or maybe it would be like, well, they changed this because certain parts of it weren't working in the original. But I do think it's very interesting as a game designer to give people the options to make some pretty significant adjustments.
So we're about halfway through. So it's time for us to talk about what's this? Oh no, Sinclair's Codex and Sinclair's Almanac. What is this thing? I don't know. I don't know either. Let's turn that off and not talk about it. Oh wait, you do know what it is.
I'll make some stuff up.
You succeeded in your diplomacy or your lying check. So
your
good
deception
job.
check.
Your deception check. There we
go. So thank you. So Sinclair's Library is a Kickstarter that'll be going live in just a couple of weeks now, releasing 2 new supplements for both Pathfinder 2E and D&D 5e, the Codex and the Almanac. One is designed more for GMs, while the other one is designed more for players. Vanessa asks, who is Sinclair? Sinclair is the man you can see on the cover of the Codex. He is, just for a little bit of information about him, he is a magus. He is a magus, very high level. And there's actually the lore of the library is that Sinclair has spent his life studying people, studying new forms of magic, studying curses, and has compiled them all into his library where he stores all this information. He is an information gatherer. The Codex specifically has information on over 150 unique NPCs, from stat blocks to plot hooks to backstories, and all of them will be illustrated, all 150 plus. It's going to have everything from little civilians like the blacksmith or a girl by the well, all the way up to like level 20 plus nemesis, which are designed to be campaign long villains that you fight at the tail end when everyone's super strong in endgame. The Almanac, meanwhile, is for players. You're going to get a whole new class. You're going to get a whole new ancestry, new subclasses for existing classes, new magic items, new tons of new archetypes. We have some really cool ones coming. We're actually about to release the playtest for 2 whip-focused archetypes, one of which that I'm super excited for, the Sonic Lasher, which is, think of it like a hyper-specialized Magus archetype who just delivers Sonic-type spells through their whip, which very, very excited for that one. But yeah, the new Cursed archetype system we're super proud of. Because we are adding mechanics, both positive and negative mechanics for different curses like lycanthropy and corruption. There is so much cool stuff being crammed into these books, and we are hyped to get the Kickstarter running and see just how interested people are. So is the link in the description of this, Stephen?
I just put it in the chat for everyone.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Right there. Yep. You can go check out Sinclair's Library and sign up for our mailing list. Anybody who signs up for the mailing list and pledges within the first 48 hours when the Kickstarter goes live gets a free dice set as well. It doesn't matter your tier, even the lowest pledge tier, which I think is going to be like $20-25 just for the PDF, will get that dice set along with their pledge.
But not the ones who pledge like, I'm just following this project, though, right? No. The lowest tier that has any reward.
Yeah,
exactly.
You have to do something.
Yeah,
not just good vibes.
Can't pay employees on good vibes.
You'd be amazed.
But that's another thing that I haven't actually really talked about this too much. But what I've loved about this whole project is right now we're a team of about 6 people. And that team is going to get bigger and bigger, especially once we know how much money we're actually working with on the Kickstarter. But we've been able to pull in some really cool people from the community that we've talked to and gotten to know a little bit. 2 of the people that come to mind, I don't know if anybody in chat has heard of Tabletop Obscura. They've been floating around the community. They're a really solid designer. And then James Beck, actually, who recently joined Deadly D8 as sort of a full-time character over there, is helping us in the 5e conversion. And it's been really awesome to work very personally with these members of the community. So that's just a little bonus.
And that goes live maybe at the end of this month, maybe.
If everything goes right, it should be live before April. If things don't go quite as right, probably a very early April.
So are you maybe racing the Battles of Ancestry's Dragons book? We'll see which
you're racing us.
Your Kickstarter or the PDF of the Dragons book, which is also close. We hope by end of March.
Oh, it may be by end of I was away, but the layout's going pretty fast. Mark and I are frantically copy fitting, and I'd say about 50% of the book is done, and I'm doing about a page every 20 to 30 minutes, so I'm going pretty quick. I have new art. This is not new art. This is, what's his name? Caladrandex, or what's his name, Mark? Caladrandex, the green dragon.
Is that Smarty Pants?
He is Mr.
Yes.
Yeah, Smarty Pants. That's his name. That's what it means, by the way. But I have new art. So if you want to get the dragon book, where you two can play a dragon. That's right, a dragon. And by the way, I have something. Look, I got the actual book. Look, the book from China. I got it. Airshipped to me. Look at that. Oh, this is new. So this you can't get in the PDF. This is the inside art, and I have this custom, like, old school 1E first edition D&D version type of art in the inside of the book. And the special edition Battles of Bestiary, which, by the way, is amazing. Look at that. It's got, like, actual embossed gold. Has different artwork. Oh, and a bookmark. Look at that. Different artwork. So you have to have both if you want to collect them. Dun, dun, dun. Nowhere else. This is the best thing I did. I love this. Well, you know what? I love these insides, and no one ever does, like, old-fashioned 1E versions. So I thought there's not a good place to put it. So I just put it when you first open it, and you're like, boom, look at those monsters. Lots of monsters. But the dragon book is coming out hopefully this month, and then you can play a dragon for the rest of your life. Because why would you play anything else?
I'm just saying, if you get both the Dragon Ancestries and Sinclair's Library, you'll be able to play a dragon with some of our new subclasses.
There you go.
There you go. Dragon who does a sonic whip.
Yeah. Oh my word.
Well, that's just his tail. And look, there's new artwork. I haven't shown this before. That is Dragon Fight. When dragons fight each other, look at that, in the air while flying. Now that is epic. Like we're talking like that you don't want to see. That's something you want to see very, very far away. You don't want to be anywhere near that. So that is also going to be in. What is the timeline for Strange and Unusual? That's the next Battles of Bestiary book. And that will be as soon as Dragons is done and everything else. That is going to start going in production in a little while. We got to finish up our last Kickstarter, and we are,
we've got to do Indigo Isles first.
Mark's working on Indigo Isles now, and that's actually, I'm almost done with the art. In fact, I looked at the art orders today, and I think it's like 95% done. I was actually kind of surprised because my artists were like, what else do you got for me? I'm like, actually ran out of art. I'm like, wow, that's a good sign. So we just need the words, Mark, text,
Yeah, well, I will finish my pass on the first part, and then you can lay that out.
All right.
Also, don't
Plus,
be.
I gotta read it too.
Yeah, once you have time, like Steven, don't be afraid to lay out ahead of me, and I can do my passing copy fit if necessary.
Let's finish the dragon book first, but all that you can find
of course.
at battlezoo.com.
I'm just saying, I know we want to get progress on it, and we can.
That Indigo Isles, man, it's gonna be so good. It's gonna be such
not to cut things off, but Jaina B in chat just mentioned if you got both of our Kickstarter books together, you could make a dragon suffering from lycanthropy, a dragon werewolf.
It's a dragon that turns into a wolf when the moon is full.
Yeah, but you know what? Don't dragons have shapeshift? So they can pretend. It's like, what are you? You're like, I'm a dragon werewolf, and the other one's like, me too, and the other one's like, me too. And you're like, no, really, I have this disease. They're like, yeah, me too. No one knows because they're just shape-shifting. Yeah, no one believes you. Like,
and then the full moon comes out and you kill all your friends.
This is the dragon who cried wolf. Get it? I'm here all week.
I'm not coming back.
Beck the Goblin is wondering if dragons can use versatile heritages. There's a sidebar that explains what you need to do if you want to do that.
I just laid that out. I literally
now they officially can in the laid on document.
I just put that sidebar in like an hour before we went live. So it's in there. It's in there. An Eastern style dragon. There's 45 different types of dragons.
5 of them are Imperial dragons, which are based on a lot of the dragons from from Asian folklore. And it's expanding on it's based on the Imperial dragons for Pathfinder 2nd edition, which are in Bestiary 3, and were very, very cool.
And one of our core authors wrote them.
One of our freelancers who did some of the 5e part of the 5e conversion for the Bestiary monster parts actually wrote was one of the two authors who wrote those Imperial Dragons for Bestiary 3.
Yep. We got everybody. Basically,
she's from Taiwan and really knows a lot really about like the lore and the history of that folklore, and so it's very useful.
Or something. That's what she knows.
I think she has a
well.
PhD in that general history area.
Yeah. Nice. Fairy dragon. We don't have a true fairy dragon though.
Fairy dragons are not a true dragon.
Yeah,
that's why they're not in there, because they don't have like age categories, and they don't fit the criteria. Dragon turtles and wyverns don't either.
Or mechanical dragon, which is my favorite.
Yeah, that's just a construct. It's not.
We're gonna fix that later. That's another book. Another book will fix that. Anyhow,
someday.
So back to
if we're not talking about products, I do feel like when we got to the main topic, I talked a few ways about how Pathfinder could learn from D&D, but there are a few things that D&D could potentially learn from Pathfinder 2
just
as well.
Few?
Yeah, there definitely are. I would say the main one is that everything I've seen from like the advice in the Dungeon Master's Guide for D&D, like it makes it sound like balancing encounters is kind of guaranteed to be something that no matter what you do, that any system wouldn't be able to kind of figure it out, and you have to do it kind of like not even more of art than science, but like almost entirely art. Seems to be what the guidance that the Dungeon Master's Guide gives is like, you can use this as a benchmark, but you really kind of have to feel it out yourself. And I feel like Pathfinder 2nd edition is proof that it is possible to make an encounter building system that does have a more rigor to it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, but isn't it so
and it's
late?
not that 5e doesn't do it. It's that 5e it almost says that you can't do it in any system. It doesn't directly say you can't do it in any system.
That's
but
wrong.
The way it describes encounter building as something that always needs to be in art, I think that Pathfinder 2nd edition shows that it could be done as a science.
I'm actually gonna have to disagree with you there. Even in Pathfinder 2e, if you follow the XP budgets perfectly, the example I always use, if you have a party that just happens to not be well-rounded, let's say you have 4 melee characters, a barbarian, a fighter, a monk, and a ranger, none of which have ranged weapons. If you put them in a balanced encounter against 3 spellcasters who are 100 feet off the ground, they can't win that. It's a balanced encounter technically, but the spellcasters will destroy them.
Oh, sure. You can always find corner cases, and it's never going to be purely science. Heck no. Otherwise, the game wouldn't have enough interesting parts. It's always going to be a mix, right, of art and science. But there's a lot of rigor, at least in Pathfinder 2nd Edition's encounter building. You can usually rely on it a pretty decent amount. And if your group is very unusual, you might have to change it a more significant amount than usual. But for most groups, you can rely on it pretty well. And even if it's off, it might be that like, oh, well, this group is a little weak in general. And it's off by overestimating them, and maybe the encounter should all be easier. But when I do that, then it gets it about right most of the time. It's never going to be perfect. You can't do that. You always need some discretion. You need the GM. You need to insert some art. I'm never going to deny that. Like, look, when I was running 3.5, I ran into epic levels, and I entirely threw out what CR it had. I only ran things by playtesting it and pretending to be my own players and their characters and seeing what happened, because a CR40 was an easy fight for them, and I playtested, I knew it would be, and a CR21 almost killed them.
Yeah, you mentioned that last week.
Oh yeah, I mentioned that last week. So like the point of that is that, like, I totally agree that there's always going to be that component, but I think PF2 shows that you can have the system be contributing and doing a decent amount of the work, so that you only have to do a small amount of that analysis on the top. And that's something that I think that the D&D could have learned from Pathfinder, in the same way that Pathfinder could learn some of the other things I mentioned earlier from D&D.
All right, I got some words here, and this is the here comes the main course. So first off, I think it's too late for that, because they purposely hid the math in 5e. It's very hard to find. You know, we have very good writers and freelancers who work for us at Roll for Combat, and it's just hidden. Like they purposely hide it and obscure it, and I don't even know if the people who work there know what it is. and it's it's part of it. And unfortunately, if you want to use systems, you have to at least show in some way how the systems work, and you can't have everything hidden. So unless they decide one day to like literally rip out the guts and show everyone how the guts work, I don't think it's possible to actually come up with those systems. Maybe they black box it. Maybe they have a table and they're like, we're not going to show you how the math works, but use this table. That might be possible, but I think it's too late. The one thing I can guarantee that they can fix now, and I strongly feel this, is for a long time I taught courses in interactive design and design in terms of how design follows function. And one thing I hate, these stat blocks for 5e, them putting it inside of these boxes. I know why they did it, because someone said here, it's like, 5e can learn that monsters can do things beyond multi-attack, and that's Doc Cooper wrote that. The reason they do that is because by putting all their stats in these blocks, all these monsters very quickly become very samey. It also limits the design, because by forcing you to put everything on a monster in these little blocks, it is incredibly hard. The layout for these pages is ridiculously hard. As someone who tried to do it, and I will talk to other people, it's a nightmare to lay out these pages. It's just really hard. The other thing is that you're limiting yourself on how much a monster can do when they do a stat block. So what I did, for the Battles of Bestiary, the 5e version, do I have it? Oh, let me get it. Oh, this is the Pathfinder version. Where's my 5e version? I have so many here. Oh, here it is. 5e version. So 5e version, I said, screw it. We're just doing it like Pathfinder. This way, you can just put as much information as you need. You're not limited to just, you're not limited to having it fit. But like, look at the skeleton monstrosity. Look at all that beautiful text. Look at all those awesome attacks. You couldn't fit that in a block if you tried. It's just not possible. And we have a lot of monsters. Look at the curtain caller. We have a lot of monsters. And one of the big things people liked about our book, and I'm tooting my own horn, is that people are like, wow, this is great. Monsters do a lot. This is great. And that literally is because of the layout. That is why the monsters in 5e are limited, because the layout is making them limited. So I think they can fix that now. And the only other person I see who does this, the layout of these monsters like this, is Cobalt. Cobalt does it my way as well. Press. Yep, and that's it. Everyone else follows the rigid block method, and I think it really limits the monsters in ways that people don't understand. And the layout itself is actually limiting the abilities of the monsters, and that's something they can fix.
Yeah. Here's an interesting thing to talk about. Is it not possible to add unique monster actions to 5e like 2e has? I think they mean things like Swallow Whole, Attack of Opportunity, things that are just in one section of the bestiary, and in those blocks you can just put actions Swallow Whole.
I think that's not what they mean, because they said unique monster actions. Those are universal monster actions.
That's fair. Yeah,
I think that they're wondering why you can, or whether you can do it or not. And I think Battles of Bestiary 5e proves that you can.
Yeah,
but you need to switch the layout, like Steven said. You can put all sorts of interesting, and 5e has universal monster abilities. I saw that one. I looked through.
Yeah, they do.
But they have trouble fitting a lot of completely new things that aren't in those because of the layout, like Steven said. And 5e as a system is definitely robust enough to allow for cool monster abilities. You'll see it from our team at Roll for Combat, who did the conversion of the monsters into 5e. We're able to keep a lot of the cool and unique abilities, and that's because Steven laid it out in a way that there was space for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like, if you try to lay out the Battles of Bestiary monsters, most of them wouldn't fit on a single page using the standard 5e layout. And forget about art. That's just actually even just getting the text on there. It's very limited the way they did it. And, this is one of these small things you really have to think about, like long term. Like, I don't know who thought of this. It's like, maybe they thought, well, it's a card layout. It looks simple. It's easy to read. And like, it looks like, a card. Well, it had massive ramifications down the line years later. Now these monsters, I think, are still very limited because of these layout issues. And that's actually one of the things I like that Paizo, I think, has some of the best layout, period, end of story.
Agreed.
And they do liquid layout. They do layouts that are very flowy, and they don't adhere the layout to the actual content or the design. They make the design separate from the rules in a way, so they don't force the rules to fit inside of a layout. Sort of. I'm gonna say sort of, because you still got to fit like a monster on a single page, and they still have some limitations. But you know, by doing the liquid layouts, they are very free to like just put the content on the page and not have to reverse it, not have to make the page fit the content. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about what can D&D and Pathfinder learn from each other, and Steven, you pointed out yours was realistic. None of the other ones we said so far were really
not
realistic for them to be applied to. It's like, hypothetically, if they were like living systems or organisms that could learn from the other and adapt on the fly, what would be things I took the question to be, what would be things they could learn and change about themselves? And I pointed out some for Pathfinder that would be way too hard to actually do.
I'll give you another realistic one. What about the business sense that WotC has decided to come out with one core rule set and then just come out with adventures, and that's it? And they're doing very well with them. I mean, they basically just keep coming out with adventures. I mean, when's the last time they added a new class? Have they? I mean,
it was Artificer. Was that Tasha's?
Yeah, and like they just don't add or change the rules ever.
Yeah,
they just don't. And meanwhile, you have Paizo. It's like every 3 months. Oh, there's no rules. I mean, it goes the other way. Like Paizo, you could almost argue, almost gives you too much. Because last night,
I've heard that complaint.
Yeah, last night we were playing game, and now my character's up to level 12, and they're just like, I'm using this ability, I'm using this ability. I'm like, I've never heard of any of these things, you know? I'm like looking them up. I'm like, there's a lot of abilities in this game. Especially now once you get the expanded rules, there's so many. But I like that. I mean, that's also, you know, but you know, the thing with 5e is you play it after 4, 5, 6 times, don't you like start seeing the same things over and over again? I mean, it gets kind of boring.
Yeah. Like our campaign is also level 12 that I play on Wednesdays. And let me tell you, our Warlock, if they're not throwing out a fireball, they're casting Eldritch Blast. That's it. That is combat.
Yeah. So, I know I mentioned before when we were talking about things that Pathfinder could learn from D&D that I think that advantage and disadvantage are not something that Pathfinder should use, or at least in the same. They have that mechanic, but they shouldn't use it as much as 5e does. Here's one that I love in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I think that 5e should not learn from it, which is the 4 degrees of success. Like, actually like those in the action economy are often stated as two favorites, and the action economy usually wins out. But I actually think the 4 degrees of success, to me, are even more important than the action economy because of the way it helps you deal with certain abilities that would just be really unfun if they failed and would do nothing if they succeeded on the save. And so your caster is like, the fight is unfun no matter what as soon as I chose to cast this, for me at least, because either it does nothing or it's over.
I hate Saber Suck. Saber Suck is the most boring thing in TTRPGs to me.
But I think that 5e should not learn it from Pathfinder because
why do you say that?
It while it's awesome and I like it a lot, it does take a little bit more calculation to have 4 things that could happen than 2. And that 5e's advantage is that it's easy to onboard, and it would make it harder to onboard. However, the action system on the flip side of that, the 3 action system, I think, is actually not harder than having to learn like the actions with the bonus actions. But when you do certain things as an action, you can't do them as bonus actions and on the same turn. So you have to learn that exception, and the movement that happens as part of it. I don't think that's actually necessarily easier. And I definitely think the 3 action system is more expressive. So I think that between those two, even though I'm unusual in that I like I love them both, but I think I like the 4 degrees of success even more, but think it shouldn't be something that 5e could learn. Whereas I think that the 3 action system is something like that, where you count up your actions rather than having different types of actions, is something it could apply.
I am actually in the complete opposite boat as you, Mark. As I love the 3-action economy, but I think 5e as a system would need to be entirely reworked. You would need to remove types of actions. You would need to assign action costs. Every spell would, which would just
I'm
be.
I'm not talking about whether it's practical or not.
Okay. Yeah. See, but that
in this entire episode, I'm never talking about whether it's practical. It also would not be practical for Pathfinder to learn from D&D. Stripping out, like I said, a bunch of things and making them optional rules. There's no way that you could do that. I'm just I guess when it's what can they learn from each other, it's like what would it be cool if they learned from each other and that would help them at doing the thing that they as a system want to do.
Now what I think
I'm picturing it in my head is like, practicality aside, because obviously neither of them can make any of these changes that we're saying, except probably Steven's layout one they can.
I think what I think D&D could do is implement the 4 stages of success. However, they don't implement the +10, -10. Keep it to 1s and 20s, but add those extra effects. Did they nat 1 their saving throw? Cool. Take double the fireball damage. Did they nat 20 it, but they don't have evasion? They take no damage anyway because of that nat 20, that kind of thing.
They could, but I don't think to me that wouldn't have the main point of having the 4 degrees of successes, which is to shunt down the encounters over boo into the critical failure on a saving throw and not the regular failure. And if you tried to do that on like an iconic spell, like where it's like, only on a natural 1 does this thing in the spell's name like really actually happen. I think people would think it was weird because it's not common enough, especially with how much advantage there is. Getting a 1 is like way less likely even in 5e than PF2, right? Because you're rolling with advantage like a lot of the time, so you only get a 1 in every 400 times.
So real quick, don't forget, do like us, do subscribe, please give us the thumbs up, do subscribe if you want to. We usually do this every week, Tuesday at 2:00 p.m., which isn't great for everyone, but it's good for us. So we do it then. And if you guys like Nonat, convince him to come on the show. I'll have him whenever he wants. And you can promote your stuff all the time. Well, also I have to be here. I wasn't here last week because I was there. And if you have any questions, you can ask him or super chat. We'll answer right away. I'll cut Mark off. Mark could be talking about how to win at D&D, and we're like, stop, we got to answer the question right now.
There you go. Answer. But it's great when people comment in chat, like Brent Bowser in chat just mentioned.
I was looking at the same one.
Having layer actions as like, or environmental effects as routines in fights is something D&D does that he felt that Pathfinder 2 could learn. And Pathfinder 2 does explicitly mention it and have a section in Game Mastery Guide for it. But what D&D does that Pathfinder could learn from is makes it explicit, gives it a name, because naming gives something power. That's the Rumpelstiltskin principle. You get power over something if you name it. And so D&D gives it a name, calls it something, and then uses it routinely. And by doing that, it makes it easier for GMs and freelancers and later designers to do it. Whereas Pathfinder 2nd Edition, it's equally possible to do it, and the Game Mastery Guide even tells you that you probably should for an exciting encounter and give you some examples of how. But by not naming it and not making it like a stated mechanic, it's way less used than it is in D&D. So I agree with Brent on that one.
I will also say, by the way, Mark, I agree. Like the 3-action economy, which everyone talks about, is genius in fighting. But the 4 stages of success and failure, that by far, if you said I had to lose 1, I would lose 3-action economy, because I love the 4 stages of success and failure, because it affects everything.
It does.
Including like spells, traps, just talking to people. It's like that the combat is combat, and there's a lot of combat in Pathfinder, but I just love when last night we were playing and someone used debilitating strike for the first time, and the monster rolled a natural 1.
Let's go.
Paralyzed for the whole round. Boy, were they excited. And it's nice seeing the 4 different things that can happen. It's just awesome. It's nice always having those 4 options. I'm glad there's
someone else out there, because I have that opinion, but I can't count my opinion because I'm extremely biased, since I'm the one who like I created that idea.
Oh, well, now
first.
I
wrote a little document about it. I proposed it, and I had to convince the other designers that it was worth the added complication. Which is, by the way, why I think D&D shouldn't learn it from Pathfinder, because they don't want to have more complication, and they all became convinced, and they realized that like they're good at reading and analyzing docs that you write, and they're like, yeah, you're right, let's do this, let's give it a shot in the playtest. It might still be too complicated, but the playtesters will be able to see, and so we might as well roll with it there.
It was complex.
So therefore that makes me biased towards it, so I can't count my own opinion. But if you also think that, then at least there's one other person who really likes it.
I love it, and it was a little weird. I remember when we first started to play, but I'm so used to it. Like, it's like anything. It's like playing Elden Ring with the weird controller setup. Everyone always complains when they first start playing Elden Ring that they never dodge or jump because they keep hitting the wrong freaking button because they have the weirdest controller setup ever. But you get used to it. You get used to it.
I changed mine.
Oh, you changed yours. There you go. You see?
I changed it to work like Monster Hunter.
Oh, well, I just got used to it. The same thing.
Like Monster Hunter is even harder to use to me. I don't know.
Really?
Just like sometimes there's two things in Monster Hunter that are very similar types of actions, but that are just totally away from each other on the controller in terms of like climbing this versus
weird.
I know, yeah. See, I'm just a big fan of X light attack, Y heavy attack.
I do like that. I'm not gonna disagree with you on that at all.
Well, I play on a DDR dance pad, so
okay, I see.
Oh, okay. Well, no wonder your Elden Ring game is so weird.
It's really hard. I have to run a lot. I'm like attack. It's like, oh man.
Is that how you keep so fit? Is DDR Elden Ring?
No joke. I did manage to set up my DDR pad to play games at one point, and I beat like the first two bosses of the Game Boy Advance game Metroid Fusion on a dance pad. Yeah, it was so fun.
Wow.
I also played Mario 64 on a dance pad, and I got pretty far.
Well, the Mario 64 is. Oh, if it's a Mario 64 and a dance, that actually would be pretty hard.
It's tough only having 4 directions to move, not the full 360.
Oh boy.
And you no camera control, you can just center it. I had one button set to center the camera. I couldn't turn it.
Actually, speaking of Mario, and believe it or not, this relates to D&D. So we had that question way back when they asked if D&D didn't have its brand name, would it be as popular? So I remember, I'm a huge platformer. I love platformers. And when Mario, Superstar Mario, whatever, Sunshine came out, I was really excited. And wow, that was like 2003, I think.
Don't stop talking, Steven.
Okay, and so when Sunshine came out, I got it, and I remember thinking, God, this game sucks. I hated Sunshine, and yet it was still getting 8s and 9s. And I said, if you took off the Mario name and released this on any other random game name, this thing would be getting 5s and 6s.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I know people like it is a bad game. It is it's probably the worst platformer with the Mario name in it.
It's too slippery.
It's so slippery.
Linda likes Super Mario Sunshine because you can clean things off with like a hose.
That's OCD.
But she also plays Power Wash Simulator.
I was about to say I would get her Power Simulator. Power Wash Simulator.
So good.
I was telling my friend about this, about that there's games that do that, and they're like, really? I said, yeah, people love it, man. They just love like cleaning and like just making things disappear. It's like a thing.
Oh, it's like ASMR for your eyes.
It is. But there you go. You can't underestimate the power of branding. You really can't. Because without the brand, but then it's like
Mario 2 was originally not
Doki Doki Panic.
Gonna be it was originally not Mario, but it's way. There's no way people would remember it to the extent that they do now if they just had kept it the original, right?
So should we just like rename Pathfinder D&D Heavy?
I mean, that depends on if you want a lawsuit.
You would just need to change one of the words, like Dungeons and Demogorgons.
You know what? You'd be amazed what you can get away with. I tell you, you would be
Dungeons
amazed.
And Desist Orders.
Well, Mazes and Monsters. There you go. No one's using it.
Yeah.
And if you don't use it for a long time, it falls out of copyright, and you can prove in court no one uses it. It was there for the taking. That was a good. I always like when people do come out with the blank and blank. Yeah, like tunnels and trolls, mazes and monsters. Was it bunnies and burrows? What else is there? There's a couple of them out there.
Every
Crusades.
Castles and Crusades, yeah.
And every nerdy show or something always has like a parody name that's always in that format.
Right.
Something and something with the same first letter.
Mm-hmm. Dungeons and Dorks.
Dungeons and Dorks, yep.
Yeah,
Mutants and Masterminds.
Right, yep. Mutants and Masterminds.
Because it just elicits that response in the brain, you know? Like, this sounds similar to something popular. So I'm going to react to it more.
So wait, what were you saying, Marcus, that they did the market research and anything with the word dragon in it or magic?
What I heard from someone who had been at WotC was that the marketing folks came back to them and were like, we looked at all titles and we found that if it had the word magic in its name, then it sold more. And if it had the word dragon in its name, then it sold more. And so they wrote Dragon Magic.
Fair enough.
Really?
That is supposedly, like, you're getting the second hand from me because I heard the story from someone who was there, but that is supposedly the genesis of the book Dragon Magic for 3.5.
It's really sad, and it's true just with everything in life, but creativity can often become more of a detriment than a blessing. Like, when I make my YouTube thumbnails and my titles and stuff, I have to follow a format and a very specific clickbait style thumbnail because it works. Like, I'll make these fancy thumbnails with a cool ambiguous title and that video will flop so hard. But I'll have a title that's like, you won't believe how bad this feat is, with me with making one of these faces with like a question mark over the feet, and it'll crack 10,000 views in 2 weeks. And it's sad.
I want to see my title cards.
I want to see more stuff like Pugmire. You know, nobody plays this game, but the art. What do you like about it?
I've never heard of that game, but it looks
I know.
great already.
Oh, look, the artwork is spectacular.
You're shooty. They're shooty.
It is. What if Pathfinder, but every single character is a shooty?
Oh my god!
And like all the classes are like shepherds and hunters and guardians, and then like there's actual notes when it comes to picking your race that's like, if you want to make a pointer, the dogs that would be pointers are bloodhounds, dachshunds, labradors, Staffordshire, and like these are the race options. It's amazing. The freaking runners.
Ooh, that's a nice layout.
I've owned this.
If you made a video that was just like Pugmire is cool and it showed you holding the book, it would not make nearly as many views as
maybe 1,000.
You can't believe how
but
bad
then you
this
have to
feat
say
is
this
with the question mark on the feet.
This game is better than D&D, and then it'll get 10,000 views.
Will this game be the next D&D?
Right. Pugmire. I love that.
Oh man!
I mean, you might not get like the positive attention you want from the views, but the algorithm will show from.
That's the inherent problem with society: is all press is good press. It doesn't matter if they're making fun of you. It doesn't matter if they're insulting you. It's engagement, and that pushes it.
Yep. Oh, I've learned that.
It's
frankly the hard way.
Horrible. Yeah,
it's quite bad. But you know what? Someone has to. But you say that, except then you have like, I don't know, like Wordle. That was completely original, and that exploded, and that wasn't based off anything.
I mean, it wasn't completely original. It was
oh my god, Mark, stop
things.
being so anal. Yes, but it's original
I don't think it
enough.
was even that original. It was just very well done for what it was doing,
and
it had some good
timing.
ideas that got it in there.
Timing. Nothing else. Look, it's original enough that some guy sold it to New York Times for 7 figures.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that's pretty original because they didn't think of it. I didn't see New York Times coming up with it. If they could have figured it out, then they wouldn't have to buy it from someone else.
I mean, they wanted the brand. They wanted to buy the brand, right? Like other people have created things that are almost exactly the same game.
Yes.
Yep.
Like Quordle, where there's 4 words or something like that.
Yes.
My girlfriend plays Sept Turtle every day. Or no, Oct Turtle, I think, where it's 8 words.
Played that,
yeah, absolutely. And it's
ridiculous.
It's hard to copyright something in games, and there's tons of mastermind style guess my word, but see how close you are things. What Wordle had was it had timing. It had that simplicity that early days Google had that caused people to use it, and it had that shareability that was really great for like Twitter or other things like that. where people were like, I don't know what to tweet about. Oh, but I could tweet this really easy to tweet Wordle thing.
And it was
so
limited.
Those all helped it. It wasn't that it was super original. It wasn't, but it was great, even though it wasn't super original.
Like, well, here's the thing. Like, they could have released it as like an app or just a game with like thousands of words that you can keep playing, but they didn't. Right. It's one word a day, which got
and
people talking
about it. And it was easy to share, and it had a very good. The graphic design was superb because it was just informative enough that you're like, "Ooh, what is this? I kind of know what it is."
Everything they did it, or he did, because it was just him. He did it just right. And I think that that's important too. You don't have to be very original or even that original at all. But if you do it just right at the right time, then absolutely it can sell for tons of money.
1,000% true. That's correct. Like, it's not that you have to do it and copy someone unless you actually are. See, if you're appealing to an algorithm like you are, Nonat, which is mindless, then you have to do it the same way because it's an algorithm. But if you're applying to people, then it comes down to timing, it comes down to design, emotions. Emotions is by far the biggest part of it, because if you don't have an emotional response to something, you won't remember it. So a big part of, I'm getting into like ad world here, but like in the ad world, you want to get people's emotions, good, bad, or other, because it forms a synaptic message in your brain and you remember things. So there's a lot of science on this, and it's just timing, man. It's just like, it's like a lot of factors that you go just right. So I don't know if you put those pugs, but you see that pug game, if you put that in D&D, would it be super popular? I don't know. Like,
right? Like if someone did it's sad, but I bet if the right name, like RuneSmith or whatever, happened to do something like a Kickstarter for a homebrew supplement that is just Pugmire, but let's say Pugmire didn't exist. They made this as a supplement for D&D. It probably would have made more money than this one that made its own unique system.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is sad.
Oh yeah,
that's definitely how it works.
Yeah.
So any other
you're strapping on to the brand that is already popular, and so that gets you what starts your momentum. And once you start having the momentum, people would see, oh, it's really high quality, all of these other things, and it starts spreading. But if you can't take off, then you don't take off.
Yep.
Does anyone have any more general questions, comments, or anything else?
Criticisms.
We'll take criticisms. You can yell at me for being mean to Mark. I'm not mean to Mark. I just talk to him too much. And I'm from New York. All right. Me yelling at you is like saying hello. I don't think
any of the fans were saying that you were mean to me here.
I was.
Oh, Nonat was. Okay.
So yes, I'm getting called away. So let's quickly wrap up. If anyone has, I say, what can 5e do? 5e can change their monster layout. If they did that will be a big change. What can Pathfinder do that 5e does? That's a tough one.
I said it before. Now you're trying to talk about realistic things, and there aren't that many realistic things either of them can do. But for unrealistic things, I think that Pathfinder could learn from the ability to, like D&D did, to start with a starter set and a simpler version, and then add things on that are supposedly optional, but that many groups use. You know, like flanking in 5e is optional. Most groups I've heard use it, but it's theoretically optional. So doing it like that has some real advantages in terms of acquiring players, while if you do it correctly, not having disadvantages in the sense that most players want to have it, but they still can, right? And so that's an interesting thing that they could have. Obviously, it's way too late to do that now. Literally, the thing I suggested is a thing that you have to start with a starter set, and Pathfinder didn't. But it is something that Pathfinder could learn from D&D, is sort of the onboarding and the new player friendliness of having certain things be optional that almost anyone in a lot of other systems would think needed to not be optional, but 5e figured out you could have it be optional.
I think Pathfinder can learn to have millions of dollars to spend on advertising and branding.
It's tricky. And millions of dollars to spend on advertising and branding does not guarantee
Yeah, no,
success.
Yeah, you can't just make that money appear, you know.
Yeah, there's unfortunately there's cultural bias. What they can do is D&D and Pathfinder can do a cross brand, cross promotion. I know, I don't know if WotC would be.
Why
up
would
for
they
it.
want to do?
Right?
You'd be amazed. Give me enough time, I can figure. I can do it. I can figure it out.
Because I can tell why Pathfinder would want to, because D&D is the one that's the name that most people know. But what is the advantage for D&D there? Because it's not like Pathfinder is causing any problems for D&D. D&D is expanding the market entirely, getting all new people who've never played tabletop RPGs to play it, and then they buy the few books that D&D puts out. And if they also play Pathfinder, that's fine for D&D. So D&D doesn't have, I don't think has any problems for Pathfinder, but they also, I don't see them as having any reason that they would need to cross promote with Pathfinder either. What's the advantage?
Because Pathfinder has much better iconics, world building. In some ways, that's a back and forth, and
that's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Is that if we saw this, I think we would see a Galarian conversion to 5e and a Forgotten Realms conversion to 2e.
Yes,
at most they would just be lore
you
books.
Put the peanut butter and the chocolate and peanut butter.
Exactly.
That would get a lot of people on both systems. I actually would be very interested in that.
I'd love to have actual written out Forgotten Realms info for the 2e system. I wouldn't mind that. I love the Forgotten Realms.
Is anything actually stopping
Yeah.
though from doing Galarian supplements in 5e? They did Kingmaker.
Well,
in 5e.
except that they would have to give them 20% of the income. And
you mean if they did it on Infinite,
or if they even just didn't do? Yeah, they can't. I mean,
not Infinite. That's
If
they did it on D&D GM's
actually,
Guild.
D&D Guild, they lose 50%, and
because they lose 20%
owns it forever.
and the other 30%.
No, and they own it forever. They own it forever.
Yeah, they sure do.
Yeah, so
they definitely wouldn't do DM's Guild, but do you have to pay 20% whenever you publish a 5e product?
No, but if you were doing it, but it would be licensed. I mean, they can't do it without a license. Not that they couldn't do. Oh, you mean Galarian and 5e?
I'm not talking about Forgotten Realms.
Oh yeah, sorry,
I'm ignoring that.
Yeah.
I'm saying, is there anything stopping the Galarian and 5e?
Nothing. They could do it on their own, and Paizo can publish it on their own.
But I'm not sure that that's actually the same thing as cross branding.
No. I'm talking about, but then because then there's no promotion by WotC to do it.
Right.
So I would actually do some cross promotion and then give them a cut, because then it's in their interest, because hey, we already have a big audience. It doesn't cost you literally anything, because all you're doing is some cheap promotion that you can latch onto your billions of dollars of other promotion, and we'll give you a percentage of profit, and everyone wins.
Oh, well, so that's an answer to my question. What can they get? And the answer is a percentage of the profit that they didn't already have. That is the thing they can get. This is my day job.
I do this all day. By the way, we did forget one super chat. Jack One Spade wrote, Dimension 20 is the best AP show. Owlbear's Hoot Growl. I don't listen to any other actual plays except my own, because I have no time. So
me neither.
Yay. But you can also listen to Roll for Combat. We got tons of actual plays.
Yeah, that's totally true. You should. And I know I said I don't really listen to actual plays, and I work for Roll for Combat. That's just me personally. I like playing, and I don't like watching other people playing games that much. And I know that makes me weird though. Like, that doesn't make
I don't
me
like either.
Because
no, I don't like
either. It makes me weird because
I don't have
slow.
They're too slow.
Steven, I don't like watching people playing games. I'm not just saying tabletop games.
I actually like people playing
football,
video games.
Baseball, any game.
Oh my god!
Any game that is out there, I don't like watching other people doing it. I'd rather do it myself.
Oh my god! In the world of importance, in my
I know that's why I realized you were underestimating my statement.
Baseball's
See?
By far anything else. It's like you can anything else in this world, baseball takes highest precedence. I love baseball.
Wait, you like baseball?
I knew that Steven likes baseball, and I just do not like watching it.
No, it's not. You go to a game with me, and I'll explain it all. I've done this many times. I don't have one set. I have two sets of season tickets for the Mets for over 25 years. That's how I love.
Amazing.
I love
there you go. So if
No
Nonat1s did come there, you could take it with the season
tickets pretty close
to the Mets.
me. You come. I have seats right behind home plate, and I can introduce you to like a lot of people. I have really good seats. But with that, let's quickly tell everyone, check out Sinclair's Codex and Sinclair's Almanac, which should be coming out any day now, right?
Yes, within I just don't want to pigeonhole myself. You know what I'm saying? Soon.
There we go. I put in the link. And also, don't forget, check out Dragon Book. That's right. Roll for Combat Dragon Book.
Dragon Book.
You can play dragons. And then you can put the two together. And we'll have Sinclair's Dragons Codex.
Ooh.
All
right.
Play an accursed dragon.
That would be cool.
I'm just saying.
That would be cool. But
I mean, actually, no kidding. But like void dragons, which have this like taint from the void that like threatens to overwhelm them. I think that some kind of curse that from Sinclair's would be a good way to represent.
You might be able to represent that with the corruption curse. The corruption is much more like decaying and just siphoning life away.
Yeah, no, you could do that with a void dragon. Even the lore that we have on it is that the PC ritual stops this from becoming an inevitability for you because you kind of put it on hold. Mm-hmm. But that if you want more power, some dragons kind of step into it anyway, and it happens. Because normally for a bestiary void dragon, it just happens no matter what.
Oh, okay.
And so for the PCs, though, they're doing a ritual that already is messing around with their magic. And so for void dragons, they're like, yes, I'm not going to automatically get corrupted. But with if you want to play one that is fighting off corruption and you want heavier mechanics for it, I think the Sinclair corruption that you just mentioned would be a good way to do it.
So buy both of the books.
So I have to go because my dogs are losing their minds. But I'll leave you with this. Let me go to the 3-person view. There we go. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the all wrong 3-person view. There we go.
All right, cool.
That was even more fun.
All right, talk to us.
You just could give a hot take at the end. It'll look like someone else made it.
Nonat1 reminding you that Roll for Combat is regularly ranked the #1 actual play podcast in Luxembourg. There we go.
There you go.
They love us in Luxembourg. I don't know why, but they do. And with that, we will probably see you next week at Tuesday at 2 p.m. And maybe my dogs will stop barking. Stop barking.
They won't. They never do. My dog was nice and sleepy this whole time.
Well, you got a good dog. I got bad dogs. Bye.
Hasta,
everyone.